I buried the evidence that could have sent my client to prison for life. That's the truth. And it's the kind of truth that could end my career, strip me of my license, and maybe even land me behind bars. But I did it anyway. Not because I wanted to protect a criminal, not because I was bribed or threatened or seduced by the idea of power. I did it because in that moment, when the weight of the justice system pressed down on me, I realized something chilling. If I didn't bury that evidence, the system itself would bury an innocent man. His name was Marcus Hale, 28 years old, former Marine, now working construction. He wasn't wealthy, he wasn't influential, and he didn't have anyone in his corner. By the time he walked into my office, the state had already decided who he was. Guilty. The charge? Murder in the first degree. The victim was his ex-girlfriend, Lila Moreno, found strangled in her apartment. No signs of forced entry. Neighbours swore they heard shouting the night she died. Marcus's fingerprints were on the doorknob, on a glass of water in her kitchen, and, most damning of all, on the belt wrapped around her neck. It looked airtight. It looked hopeless. But when Marcus sat across from me, shoulders hunched, hands shaking, I didn't see a cold-blooded killer. I saw a man already drowning in a tide he couldn't swim against.
I didn't do it,
he said, voice raw, broken.
You have to believe me. I went over that night because she called me. She said she needed help. She was scared. By the time I got there, she was already gone.
The police claimed otherwise. They said his alibi was weak, his story inconsistent, his grief rehearsed. They wanted to close the file quickly, make the headlines neat. Ex-boyfriend kills young woman. Justice served? But justice wasn't being served. Justice was being steamrolled. The prosecution's discovery file was thick. Photos of the crime scene, forensic reports, statements from neighbours who described Marcus as angry and jealous. And then there was the belt. Black leather, torn near the buckle. Marcus's fingerprints pressed into the material like scars. That should have been the end of it. That piece alone could sink him. But during my own review of the evidence, something caught my eye. The timestamp on the forensic log didn't line up. The belt had been logged into evidence 2 hours before Marcus was even arrested, which meant one of two things. The police found the belt before Marcus was in custody, and yet, somehow, his prints were already on it. Someone tampered with the evidence log. Either way, it reeked of misconduct. I should have brought it up immediately, filed a motion, called out the discrepancy in open court. That's what a good lawyer does. But here's the problem. I'd been in this courthouse long enough to know how these stories end. You bring up a discrepancy, and suddenly the prosecution corrects it. They amend the report. They claim clerical error. And once they patch the hole, the belt still stands as the crown jewel of their case. I needed more than a hole. I needed leverage. So I buried it, quietly. I slid the discovery folder back across the table during a meeting with the DA, never mentioning the mismatch. I pretended I hadn't noticed. And then, in private, I started digging. The more I pulled, the uglier it got. The detective in charge of the case, Detective Kincaid, had a reputation, not officially, but whispered among defense attorneys. Evidence had a habit of appearing conveniently in his investigations. Witnesses remembered things more clearly after his interviews. Juries trusted him because he looked like every cop on TV. Square jaw, steady voice, good suit. But I found 3 past cases where his evidence handling was questioned. Not enough to overturn verdicts, but enough to leave a stain if you look closely. I wasn't just defending Marcus. I was fighting a machine. The first time Marcus stood before the judge, he looked small. That's what courtrooms do. They shrink people. The prosecutor, Sandra Lee, strode in like she owned the place. She had a reputation for being ruthless, never losing a murder trial. She laid out her opening statement with surgical precision. Motive. Marcus couldn't handle Lila leaving him. Opportunity. He knew where she lived, had a key. Means. The belt, with his fingerprints. The jury nodded along, already halfway convinced. When it was my turn, I stood, adjusted my jacket, and said the words I didn't fully believe yet. Ladies and gentlemen, Marcus Hale is innocent, and before this trial ends, you will see just how badly the state has failed not only him, but Lila Moreno as well. It wasn't bravado. It was a promise I wasn't sure I could keep. On the 3rd day, a neighbour testified. An older woman, Mrs. Keegan, who swore she heard Marcus shouting at Lila the night of her death. Sandra asked,
"Do you recall what he said?"
Mrs. Keegan hesitated, then nodded.
He said, "If you leave me, I'll kill you."
The jury gasped. My stomach dropped. When it was my turn, I approached slowly, gently. Mrs. Keegan, how long have you lived in that building?
32 years.
And your hearing, ma'am? You use a hearing aid, correct?
Yes.
And the walls in your building, are they thick or thin?
Thin.
So it's possible, isn't it, that you heard an argument, but not clearly enough to identify exact words? She faltered. For the first time, the jury's certainty cracked. But even with small victories, the belt hung over everything. Every night, I sat in my office, staring at the evidence photos. That black strip of leather coiled like a snake, Marcus's prints glowing under forensic dust. If I brought up the timestamp, the DA would fix it. If I stayed silent, Marcus might swing for something he didn't do. So I made a choice. I buried the mismatch deeper, and I went after Kincaid instead. I requested every piece of correspondence between Kincaid and the crime lab. Late at night, with coffee and trembling hands, I combed through them. That's when I found it, a half-buried email, timestamped 1:13 a.m., hours before the belt was discovered. It was from Kincaid to the lab tech, just one line.
Run the prints. I'll have the item to you shortly.
The item wasn't logged into evidence until 3:17 a.m., which meant Kincaid had already decided whose prints would be on it before it even existed. I wasn't protecting Marcus. I was protecting the only chance he had left. The first rule of trial law is simple. Never ask a question you don't already know the answer to. The second, always be ready for the question you don't want answered. By the second week of Marcus's trial, I knew Sandra Lee, the prosecutor, had mastered both rules. She carried herself like the verdict was already signed. Every witness she called, every piece of evidence she presented was designed to remind the jury of one thing. Marcus was violent, jealous, dangerous, and the jury wanted to believe her. People always want simple villains. But the truth is never simple. On day 7, Sandra called an old girlfriend of Marcus's to the stand. Her name was Denise. I could feel Marcus tense beside me as she walked up, avoiding his eyes. She testified that during their relationship, Marcus had anger problems, that he once punched a wall during a fight, that he could be controlling, moody, unpredictable. Sandra asked the killer question.
In your opinion, Ms. Walker, is Mr. Hale capable of violence?
Denise swallowed, then said,
Yes.
It landed like a hammer. The jury stiffened. One woman in the back shook her head in disgust. When it was my turn to cross, I leaned on the podium and kept my voice calm. Ms. Walker, did Marcus ever strike you?
No.
Did he ever threaten you?
No.
Did he ever harm you in any physical way?
No.
So the worst you can say, Ms. Walker, is that Marcus got angry once and hit a wall? Silence. She nodded reluctantly. I pressed harder. And yet, in spite of this alleged temper, you stayed with him for over a year? Another reluctant nod. The jury leaned back, uncertain again. Sandra objected, claiming I was badgering. The judge sustained, but the damage was done. The jury no longer saw Marcus as a monster, just flawed, human. But flaws weren't enough to save him. Every time the belt appeared in testimony, the room shifted. The lab tech described the fingerprints. The medical examiner explained how the marks around Lila's neck matched the pattern of leather. The jury stared at the photos like they were looking at Marcus's signature on a confession. I stayed silent. My stomach knotted. The timestamp issue burned in the back of my mind. I had the ammo to blow the belt apart, but if I pulled the trigger too early, the prosecution would simply reframe it as an error. So I waited. On day 10, the state called Detective Kincaid. He strode to the stand like a man who owned the room. Broad shoulders, pressed suit, salt and pepper hair, the kind of cop juries trust instinctively. He swore in, settled back, and told his story. How he arrived at the scene, how he noticed Marcus's prints, how the evidence pointed in one direction and one only. Sandra guided him like a dance partner. Together they painted Marcus as the inevitable suspect. But when my turn came, I sharpened my questions like blades. Detective, at what time did you first discover the belt?
Roughly 3:15 a.m.
And when was it logged into evidence?
3:17.
And when did you instruct the lab to test it for fingerprints?
After we logged it,
I pulled a paper from my folder, waved it lightly. Detective, are you familiar with this email? His eyes flickered, just for a second. The jury noticed. I didn't push yet. I tucked it back into my folder. Nothing further, Your Honor. The seed was planted. Doubt whispered through the jury box. That night, after court, Marcus snapped.
Why didn't you go harder at him?
He demanded in the holding room.
You had him. You had him. Why didn't you finish it?
I leaned forward. Because if I take the shot too early, they'll bury it. I need to catch him when he can't wriggle free. Marcus slammed his fist on the table.
I'm not built for this. I can't sit here every day while they call me a murderer.
His eyes were bloodshot, his hands trembling. For the first time, I saw the edges of him fraying, and I wondered, could the jury see it too? Did they see a man breaking under injustice, or a guilty man cracking under the weight of his lies? I made a habit of watching the jurors, noticing their tells. The foreman, a middle-aged accountant, tapped his pen when he was unconvinced. Juror number 6, a young woman with glasses, scribbled furiously whenever Sandra spoke, but barely wrote when I cross-examined. Juror number 9, a retired nurse, watched Marcus with something like pity. They weren't a unified group yet. They were fractured, and fractured juries can swing. By the end of week 2, whispers filled the courthouse. Reporters circled. The story was gaining traction. Beautiful young woman strangled by jealous ex. Headlines were already writing the ending. Sandra cornered me in the hallway one afternoon. Her smile was sharp as glass.
You're good, but you know how this ends. The jury's not going to forgive what he did.
If you're so sure of your case, why are you worried about mine? Her smile faltered, just for a second. And I knew she wasn't as confident as she pretended. The breakthrough came from a place I didn't expect. A janitor. During a recess, he approached me nervously, hat in his hands.
You're defending Hale, right? Look, I don't want trouble, but I cleaned the evidence room, and I seen Detective Kincaid in there, alone, a couple nights before trial.
My pulse quickened. Did you report this? He shook his head.
Who's gonna believe me? I'm just the janitor.
But I believed him, because suddenly, the email, the timestamp, the inconsistencies, they weren't just smoke anymore. There was fire. That night, I stared at the evidence binder until my vision blurred. If I went after Kincaid with everything I had, I'd be accusing a decorated detective of planting evidence. If I lost, the jury would see me as desperate, Marcus as guilty, and the verdict would crush him. If I stayed quiet, Marcus might still lose, but at least I wouldn't burn my own reputation to ash. It was the lawyer's eternal choice. Protect the case or protect yourself. And in that moment, I chose Marcus. The next morning, I walked into court with my heart pounding and my folder heavy. When Kincaid returned for redirect, I stood slowly, deliberately. Detective, you testified that you logged the belt into evidence at 3:17 a.m., correct?
Yes,
And that you requested fingerprint analysis after it was logged?
that's correct.
Then, Detective, I pulled out the email. Read it aloud. Run the prints. I'll have the item to you shortly. Timestamp, 1:13 a.m., 2 hours before you claim you even found the belt. Can you explain that? The room froze. The jury's heads snapped toward Kincaid. His jaw tightened. He muttered something about clerical error. Sandra objected. The judge ordered a sidebar. But the seed I'd planted earlier had now split open, blooming into something poisonous. The jury had seen him sweat, and once trust cracks, it never repairs. When I exposed Kincaid's email, the courtroom exploded. The judge pounded a gavel, reporters scrambled. Sandra looked like I'd just spit in her coffee. But the jury? Their eyes lit up with something I hadn't seen before. Doubt. For the first time, Marcus wasn't the only one on trial. After court adjourned, Sandra stormed over to me in the hallway. Her voice was low, venomous.
You think you're clever, but you're about to tank your entire career accusing a decorated detective of fabricating evidence? You want to play dirty? Fine. Don't cry when it blows up in your face.
She didn't wait for a response. She didn't have to. Her threat hung in the air long after she left. I'd crossed a line, and there was no going back. The next morning, I pivoted our entire strategy. Instead of merely defending Marcus, I began prosecuting the police. Every witness who mentioned evidence, I hammered chain of custody, documentation, exact times, names, and signatures. I wasn't just poking holes in their story anymore. I was unraveling the stitching one thread at a time. The judge allowed it, reluctantly. But I could feel her patience thinning. She didn't want this case turning into an indictment of her courthouse. And the jury? They leaned forward now, not back. They were listening. But then Sandra played her card. She called Marcus to the stand. I'd advised against it. I'd told him he didn't have to. That silence was safer. But Marcus insisted.
If they don't hear me, they'll never believe me.
So he swore in, sat tall, and tried to hold his voice steady. Sandra was surgical. She walked him through his relationship with Lila, their breakup, the arguments, the night in question.
Mr. Hale, did you love Lila Moreno?
Yes,
And when she ended things, how did you feel?
crushed.
Angry.
Upset, yes. But I'd never hurt her.
Never? Because we've heard from multiple witnesses that you shouted at her, that you threatened her, that you told her, if you leave me, I'll kill you.
Marcus's jaw clenched. His eyes darted toward the jury. He shook his head.
That's not what I said. I told her if she left me, it would kill me.
The words hung there, heavy. The jury shifted uneasily. Sandra smiled like a predator. She'd twisted his words into a weapon, and Marcus had sharpened the blade himself. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Marcus on the stand, his cracked voice, his desperate eyes, the jurors whispering to each other afterward. I believed him. I had to believe him, but belief wasn't evidence, and sometimes, in the quiet hours, a darker thought crept in. What if he really did it? What if I'm tearing down the system for a guilty man? The line between loyalty and delusion blurred. On day 15, just when I thought I'd lost control of the narrative, a bombshell dropped. The janitor who had tipped me off about Kincaid agreed to testify. Nervous, sweating, twisting his hat in his hands, but he spoke clearly enough.
I seen Detective Kincaid in the evidence room, alone, the week before trial. He had that belt with him. I wasn't supposed to see, but I did.
Sandra tore into him.
You're a janitor, sir. Do you keep time logs? Do you have proof? Isn't it possible you misremembered the day, or that you saw something else entirely?
He stammered, but he didn't break.
I know what I saw.
It wasn't ironclad, but it was enough to taint Kincaid further. I recalled Kincaid for cross. His jaw was set, eyes cold. Detective, is it true you accessed the evidence room alone, unsupervised, days before trial?
No.
So you deny the janitor's testimony?
Yes.
And yet, the chain of custody log shows your badge swiped in at 11:42 p.m. on March 3rd. No one else logged in or out until 6 a.m. Can you explain that? Silence. The jury stared. Sandra shifted uncomfortably. The judge raised an eyebrow. Kincaid swallowed hard.
I must have forgotten, but I assure you nothing improper occurred.
It was the first time the great Detective Kincaid sounded uncertain. That night, Marcus pulled me aside. His voice was low, urgent.
What if this doesn't work? What if they still believe him?
I looked at him, at the bruises under his eyes, the weight hanging off his shoulders. Then we appeal. We keep fighting.
And if they convict me anyway?
Then I keep fighting without you. His eyes searched mine, and for the first time, I realized he wasn't just scared. He was hiding something. 2 days later, I found out what? A sealed envelope arrived at my office. No return address. Inside, a single photo. Lila, alive. Weeks before her death. Arm in arm with the man I didn't recognize. Scrawled on the back in block letters, ask who she was really afraid of. My blood ran cold. The photo burned a hole in my desk. Lila, alive and laughing, weeks before her death, her arm around a stranger, a man I'd never seen in Discovery, never mentioned in the prosecution's narrative. The words scrawled on the back, ask who she was really afraid of, felt less like a clue and more like a dare. And suddenly, Marcus's late-night panic made sense. I dug. Fast, pulled phone records, cross-referenced social media, subpoenaed anything I could under the thin veil of possible new evidence. It didn't take long. The man in the photo was identified. Adrian Cole, a co-worker from Lila's office, married, 2 kids, no criminal record, but one ugly rumor tucked in HR complaints, inappropriate behavior with female employees. And then the bombshell. Lila had filed a complaint against him just 2 weeks before her death. The complaint disappeared into bureaucracy, buried. But the copy I secured from a sympathetic clerk was damning. Lila wrote, "I don't feel safe around him." My pulse thundered. Marcus wasn't the only man in her life she was afraid of. The next morning, I walked into court armed with fire. When the prosecution rested, I motioned for permission to introduce new evidence. Sandra exploded, claiming it was a delayed tactic, irrelevant, prejudicial. The judge frowned, flipping through the complaint I slid across her bench. Her lips tightened.
Allow it.
The jury leaned forward. I called Adrian Cole to the stand. His face drained of colour the second he saw the photo. I asked him simple questions first. Innocuous. Work hours. Relationship with Lila. Then I went for the throat. Mr. Cole, did Lila Moreno ever file a complaint against you?
I don't recall.
Allow me to refresh your memory. I handed him the document. He froze. The courtroom buzzed. Reporters' pens scratched furiously. The jury's eyes narrowed. Sandra objected again, but the damage was done. Under pressure, Adrian cracked. Not a confession, but something close enough. He admitted to pursuing Lila. Admitted she rejected him. Admitted she overreacted with her complaint. But when I asked where he was the night of her death, his alibi crumbled. He stuttered about being at home but had no corroboration. For the first time, the jury saw someone else, someone other than Marcus, as a possible killer. Sandra's case, once airtight, was now riddled with holes. Closing arguments felt like a knife fight. Sandra leaned on emotion.
Lila cried for help, and the only man who had motive, opportunity, and means was Marcus Hale.
I leaned on logic. The state wants you to believe a story full of holes, evidence that doesn't add up, a detective who can't keep his timeline straight, and a victim who had reason to fear another man entirely. Then I looked at the jury and said the words that had haunted me since day one. This case is not about proving Marcus innocent. It's about proving the state failed, and they have, terribly. The jury retired. Hours crawled by, then a day, then 2. On the morning of day 22, they returned. The foreman stood, paper trembling in his hands.
On the charge of murder in the first degree, we find the defendant, Marcus Hale, not guilty.
The room erupted. Gasps, whispers, sobs. Marcus collapsed into his chair, head in his hands. His mother wept in the back row. Sandra's face was stone. Kincaid's jaw was iron. And me? I sat frozen, heart pounding, because for the first time I wondered, had I freed an innocent man? Or just introduced enough doubt to let a guilty one walk? After court, Marcus hugged me. His grip was desperate, crushing.
Thank you. You saved my life.
But his eyes told a different story. Not gratitude, not relief. Something else. Something darker. A month later, I got another envelope. No return address. Inside, another photo. This time, of Marcus, standing outside Lila's apartment, the night she died. Scrawled on the back, justice is never clean. And that's the truth. I buried evidence. I twisted the system. I exposed corruption and introduced new villains. I saved Marcus Hale. But did I save justice? Some nights, I think I freed an innocent man. Other nights, I think I just outplayed the state. Either way, the line between lawyer and criminal blurred forever. And every time I look at my reflection, I hear the words that started it all. I buried the evidence that could have sent my client to prison for life. Because maybe, just maybe, that's exactly what I did.